Welcome to Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theatre. Now, here's your host, Lisa Condit.
Good morning, everybody. So happy to be here today. And with me, I have Jim Moran. Jim is the Director of Outreach for the American Antiquarian Society. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Always lovely to have you. And, you know, we talked before about the American Antiquarian Society, and it's such a unique treasure that we have here in the city of Worcester. Would you mind just describing what it is that the American Antiquarian Society does and a little bit about your building right here in Worcester?
Oh, I'd be glad to. The American Antiquarian Society is a national research library of American history and culture, and a learned society, all dedicated to pre-20th century American history and culture. And specifically, we collect the printed record of what is now the United States, from the year 1640 through 1876. And within those time periods, those years, we try to collect and preserve and make available for study everything printed in those between those 2 years. We collected the great works of literature and government, from the Declarations of Independence to the U.S. Constitution to the Gettysburg Address, but we also collect ads for runaway wives and billheads and counterfeit money and all the kinds of crazy things that people print over the years, some of which they don't intend to be saved, preserved. You know, I like to say we collect the equivalent of historic junk mail. The kinds of things that, you know, people printed to sell something and didn't expect that people would keep it or honor it after that sale was completed. We're interested in anything and everything that was printed anywhere in what is now the United States. And actually, we also collect from Canada and the British West Indies as well.
Wow.
We have about 4 million items in our collection, and it's all housed in the big domed brick building at the corner of Park Avenue and Salisbury Street. So it's all there, and we never get rid of anything. We're very involved now in trying to digitize the collection and make that available through third-party vendors, so that people anywhere in the world can study the material. But even when we digitize something, we keep the original, the hard copy, the paper copy. We lovingly preserve that in our library and have no intention of ever getting rid of anything, because you never know. Sometimes something gets digitized or made into some sort of electronic facsimile, and there's something wrong with that facsimile, or they may be wrong with the machine in which it's read on, as anyone with an 8-track tape can attest.
Right.
So we want to make sure we can always go back to the original, and so that's our mission. And then we make this available through a wide variety of programs, from programs for scholars to programs for K-12 teachers to programs for the general public. All kinds of things for all kinds of people.
I find it completely fascinating. See, this is right up my alley because I don't know if I mentioned it before. I was a comparative literature major. So a couple of things that jump out at me is, oftentimes it's the written materials that people don't think are going to be saved that speak the most about what's really happening in the culture of the time, right? And you can tell a lot about what people are thinking, their movements, as far as their political beliefs, what's important to them through the literature, but not just the literature, the sales materials, the notes, the letters. Obviously, you're saving everything, like you said. It's almost like the equivalent of the top of our dresser, but over hundreds of years, which is also amazing because if you start in 1640 and you go to 1876, first of all, I'm so excited that you keep the original because nothing replaces the look and the feel of the original. Nothing. You know, a picture of a document from 1640 is not going to be the same as actually seeing that document for sure. But very precious. I find it fascinating that you have such a large span of years, too, from 1640 to 1876. There were some really significant changes in our country alone. What are some of the most notable things that you would like to say? What are the differences between the things you have from 1640 to the latest items in 1876?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at that. There are certainly big, significant historic events that occurred in that time period, from the American Revolution to the Civil War. We chose 1876 for a variety of reasons. One is historically, it's the last full year of Reconstruction, which was the period after the Civil War when we get the country together. Also, the year that the copyright laws change, and by law, two copies of something are sent to the Library of Congress when anything is copyrighted. So, in a way, we were kind of duplicating the work of the Library of Congress, and that didn't make much sense. And of course, the last reason is it was the year of the centennial of the founding of the country, and it just seemed like a kind of a good spot to stop.
Oh, yeah.
But the other thing that's really fascinating is the technology of printing. A lot of different kinds of technologies occur in that time span. One of the most interesting, I think, is the development of lithography and color lithography. Lithography is you draw with a crayon on a very special stone, a limestone that actually only quarried in Germany, and then you print from that drawing. And it makes it very easy to do, very quick to do, and relatively cheap to do. And that resulted in a flood of images in the 1830s, 1840s, and 1850s, and beyond. And in the later time period, they also added color. They developed a way to do different stones in different colors, and the result was beautiful. Color images. Currier and Ives is probably the most famous color lithographer in the country. But Americans bought these. They were very relatively cheap, and they bought them by the truckload and put them in their homes, in their places of business. And it really was a way, the first time when Americans could really see a lot of images, and see images of everything from current event kind of things, battles or disasters or people like presidents, or bucolic scenes from a town or a farm or something. So they really they loved them, like just as we love pictures today.
Oh, absolutely.
Americans loved them then, but it was a real change, and we have a lot of those kinds of lithographs in our collection as well.
Well, and it's amazing too, because I think we need to reinforce you're a national research library, and
yes.
How many of you exist in the country?
There's only one of us.
That's
There's no
right.
other. There's the Library of Congress, which does.
But it's amazing.
We're the only one like us. We have been collecting in this way, trying to be the storehouse for the country before anybody else did. We were founded in 1812, and the Library of Congress at that point was a law library for Congress. So they weren't collecting the way we are, and so we have the largest single collection of early American imprints anywhere in the world,
which is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing when you think about it, and in some ways it's amazing we're here in Worcester.
Yes.
And I think the fact that we are in Worcester is one of the reasons we've been preserved for so long.
Which is great.
We were founded here to keep us safe from the British when we were at war with the British in 1812, and being here has been a very safe, wonderful location for us.
And just before we get into the partnership on our event, who founded the American Antiquarian Society? I'm just curious.
A man by the name of Isaiah Thomas, who was a printer himself. He came to Worcester right before Lexington and Concord, right at the beginning of the Revolution. He came here. He actually took his press from Boston and in his words, stole it out of Boston, literally in the middle of the night, to keep the royal authorities from impounding it, from confiscating his press and his typecases. So he was a rabble-rousing, pro-independence printer, and Worcester was a hotbed of what they called Whig or what we now call patriot sentiment, and so it was a safe place for him to be, and he stayed here for the rest of his life.
It's amazing.
At the end of his career, he wrote a very influential history of printing and began collecting printed material, and just amassed a huge amount of it himself. And then got the idea to found a society that would celebrate American history and culture.
It's amazing. I love it. And so if people want to come in and view a portion of the collection or come for a tour, you do offer tours, right?
We do. We do public tours every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and they are free of charge. And other than some holidays, the only time we don't do a tour is when no one shows up. So, and we do ask people if they're bringing a large group to give us a call ahead of time so that we're prepared for it. And sometimes we'll schedule special tours at other times for groups. So if someone's listening to this and thinking, well, I've got a garden club or a historical society or some other group that would be really would love to do this, but Wednesday at 3 isn't so good for them, have them, give me a call and I can schedule another tour at another time. We also do public programs that are largely they're lectures and talks and performances, and they are usually done in Antiquarian Hall, our home, at the corner of Park and Salisbury Street, and they're usually free of charge, but sometimes they're not. In fact, the program we're about to talk about does have a charge for it, and we also do some hands-on history programs that are full-day programs on Saturdays, and we charge for those, and they allow people to actually dig into the collections themselves and explore the actual artifacts. So they're a little more involved.
Oh, there are so many fascinating things. Hold on to those thoughts because we need to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back as we continue our conversation with Jim Moran with the American Antiquarian Society.
Now, back to more of Behind the Scenes at the Hanover Theatre, and your host, Lisa Condit.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks again for listening as I continue our conversation here with Jim Moran. Jim is the Director of Outreach for the American Antiquarian Society. And Jim, we were talking a little bit about the collection, about the amazing story behind the American Antiquarian Society, the years of your collection, the fact that you are the largest and the only antiquarian society in the United States, which is awesome. And we touched a little bit about how the history and the literature really are interrelated. You talked a little bit about how you do offer free tours. And so just in case our listeners want to know, how can they find out more information, Jim?
Well, the best way is probably where there is a reminder about our public tours every Wednesday at 3, but there's also a listing of our public programs this spring. And actually, as soon as we know our public programs, we put them on our website, and with information about what the program is and who the presenter is and where it will be and if there are any costs associated with it. Most of our programs are free of charge, but we do occasionally charge fees depending upon what the program is and who our partners are. We like to collaborate as much as we can with other community groups, and in fact, we're going to collaborate with Hanover Theatre for one of our programs coming up, and there is a fee for that.
That's right. But before we move on, what's your website, Jim?
Our website is www.americanantiquarian.org.
Perfect.
So just with our name. And there's all kinds of information also about becoming a reader. We welcome people who have a research project to come in and use the library at no charge as well. So there's lots of information there for people to kind of explore us and what we have to offer.
Okay, and so on March I was going to say March 2nd, but that's today. Haha. On March 25th, Tuesday, March 25th, we are doing a program with you, and it's called The Drama of the Dram, a play reading and conversation about 19th century theater and alcohol, past and present. And this program is generously sponsored by AdCare Hospital, which of course is completely appropriate. And now tell us a little bit about this play and the author of this play, and why this particular reading. Why is this an important thing for us to bring to the masses?
Well, the Drama of the Dram will feature a play reading of The Drunkard. And the genesis for this came about, we did a program similar to this last spring with a contemporary play about the 19th century. That featured the playwright as well. And that went very well. And we started to think about, well, we should maybe do this on a regular basis. And I thought it would be fun to look at a play that was very, very popular in its day and that most people probably have never heard of. And The Drunkard, or H. Smith, was written in 1844 and was one of the most popular plays in the 19th century. In fact, it's pretty safe to say it was probably the second most popular play of that entire century. It was only eclipsed by dramatic interpretations or versions of Uncle Tom's Cabin, the very famous abolitionist novel. And that was, as soon as it was published as a novel, was dramatized, and there were productions of that all over the place, and that really took off. But before Uncle Tom's Cabin, the play that was produced the most was The Drunkard. And it was, it's a classic kind of melodrama. It's got a classic villain and a beautiful heroine and a hero who gets into all kinds of trouble, including trouble with the bottle. And the play was very notorious in its own time for its depiction of the delirium tremens, the famous DTs that, of course, if one thinks too much, one can, have the psychological, physiological, I should say, effect. And it portrayed that on stage, and that was one of the things that made it so famous. Some scholars believe that John Goff saw this play in Boston when it was first performed, and that inspired him to become a temperance orator, and that he also talked about having the DTs in his lectures, which were very dramatic. They were kind of a lecture and a one-person. And, nobody's heard of John Goff today, but he was very famous in the 19th century as well, and took the pledge in Worcester and built a home in Boylston. And so he's a local fellow. And so I just thought it would be really interesting if we read selections from The Drunkard. And we'll have Tom Augst, who is a scholar from NYU, who is in residence here for the year as an AAF-NEH fellow, talk about the role of The Drunkard, the play, in terms of 19th century culture and our own long understanding of alcohol abuse, or kind of historically. What impact it had. And we're also going to be joined by Jim McKenna, who is Vice President of Marketing and Development at AdCare Hospital. And the two of them, the evening will be, a scene or two of The Drunkard, and then these two gentlemen, Jim and Tom, talking about what they see in the play and how that influences historically how it played out, and how it influences the way we look at alcohol and drug abuse and how we treat it today.
It's so fascinating. It really is. And literature, movies, and TV now, radio shows back in the day, alcohol has always been a part of the storylines, right? And it's just taken a different seat depending on the characters in whatever piece of literature or material we're talking about.
Right.
And so, any spoilers about that?
Well, the one thing I think the drunkard deals with alcohol as a moral failing, which is certainly the way it was predominantly viewed in the 19th century. And to some degree, I think that has become pervasive. And while we no longer intellectually understand that alcoholism is, we have a greater understanding of its physiological impact and how it really is more of a disease than anything else. I think there's still a shadow of somehow people are at fault for having this problem. And I think that unfortunate legacy is one that comes out of the drunkard. So I think that it'll be interesting to kind of have not only Tom and Jim talk about this, but also to have the audience. We hope the audience, this is a conversation that everybody present will feel encouraged to talk and to listen and to engage with one another.
Absolutely. And this is such an interesting program. These Access Hanover Lyceum Series events, they're free to our members. I believe they're free to your members.
Yes, they are.
Yes, AdCare is also inviting some of their members to come for free. Normally, there's such a reasonable price of just $10, and it is a very in-depth look at some aspect of theater and performing arts. So this is such an interesting collection to me, and not what people would normally find, but it has so much relevance in today's conversations, not just from, the 1800s.
Right, and it's a key part of what I try to do here at AAS and what the society generally tries to do, and that's to make history literally relevant and come alive for people today. To take take the volumes off our shelves and present them or talk about them in ways that make them really dynamic and relevant to people living today. And so this is just, I think, a really kind of cool way to do that, to take and admittedly, this style of performance, we're going to have the actors kind of ham it up a bit by performing in an old-time melodramatic style, but I think we'll have kind of fun with that, but also a way to see how, things are inherently part of their time and also transcend time. And it'll be an interesting way to kind of look at those issues.
I can't wait. And so everybody, this event is going to be Tuesday, March 25th at the Hanover Theatre, and you can get your tickets online at thehanovertheatre.org. You can call our box office as well at 877-571-SHOW. If you're a member of the theater or the Antiquarian Society or with AdCare, just let our box office know, and you will get complimentary tickets for that. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the program, and I think you've already started to help this come alive for us. Anything else? Yes, absolutely. And I really want us to make it over there for a group tour. Some Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I need to go. Oh,
we'd love to. We'd love to have you anytime. And in the meantime, I hope all your listeners join us on March 25th at the Hanover Theatre from 5:30 to 7:30.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great evening. So thanks again, Jim. You have a wonderful day. And everybody else, stay tuned for more behind the scenes at the Hanover Theatre.